Rookie Showcase kicks off tonight in Estero, Florida, and we have the play-by-play voice of the Charlotte Checkers, TJ Chillot, here to break it all down. We discuss the guys we are looking forward to watching and who has the most to prove in the Rookie Showcase.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. So, Cats fans, it may not be a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. I want to wish Nick Fairbanks the best on his vacation before returning back to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But it is Rookie Showcase time that begins tonight in Estero, Florida, with the Florida Panthers taking on the Carolina Hurricanes tonight at 7 p.m., tomorrow against the Nashville Predators at 6 p.m., and then Monday at 1 p.m. against the Tampa Bay Lightning with a practice day on the Sunday, the 17th. But like we said in our cold open, we have a special guest here, and he is the play-by-play voice of the Charlotte Checkers, the Chillin With Chillot Podcast as well, a Philadelphia Eagles fan who now his Eagles are 2-0 and recently engaged as well. TJ Chillot, welcome back to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Armando, thanks again for having me on. Yeah, and I hope Nick is enjoying his vacation. Me too. I'm on vacation. I'm actually out of the country here in the beautiful Jamaica. Just got engaged a couple nights ago, so it's been a whirlwind last couple of weeks. I've seen 2 Eagles victories since I've been here on the island, so it's been really good. And every single day I look at that calendar, that hockey season's coming up quicker and quicker, and I can't wait. We're under a month to go. I'm ready.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you were able to come on the show despite you being out of the country. I think this needs to be a yearly occurrence here for you, right before Rookie Showcase gets underway, to have you on the show. And of course, you are getting your vacation in before the season, not only getting engaged, but you know, you're gonna see a lot of these guys in the AHL this year. And I want to start with the AHL side of things. The season that was for the Charlotte Checkers, advanced past the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in comeback fashion last season. Unfortunately, their season does end to the Hershey Bears, which former Panthers prospect Henrik Borgstrom got the game-winning assist on in the Calder Cup Championship. I want to get your thoughts on the season that was for the Checkers, even though their playoff run was without Zach Dalpe.
Yeah, obviously they didn't go as far as they wanted, right? I mean, everybody wants to lift a Calder Cup at the end of the season. So it certainly didn't last as long as they had hoped for or that they wanted. And it was certainly a tough campaign to follow up from the previous year being the Atlantic Division champions. You know, when you look back and forth from, you know, the 2020-21 to 21-22 and 22-23, this team has just really been improving on the ice. So when you go back to last year, you know, to not win the division after winning it the year before, it was a little bit of a sputter, but they still made the playoffs. This is a team that is consistently in the AHL postseason. They made the playoffs, and that's kind of all that mattered. And it really, when the year before, they kind of seemed to be a team of destiny because of a really strong second half, February, March. They just steamrolled over opponents and worked their way up. They were in 4th place in the division in mid-January, give or take, and all of a sudden they win the division at the end of April, or at the end of the season, in the middle of April, I should say. Last year, they kind of became more of a team of destiny even later than that, and particularly with that Lehigh Valley series. I mean, they were down It's a 3-game series. They already lost their opener. They're in double overtime in game 2. Their season is literally on the line. I mean, this is it. You either score or you're done. And not only do they get that goal from Lucas Carlson, they then come out the next night and absolutely hammer Lehigh Valley and send them packing back to Pennsylvania. And then the Checkers would take on the ultimate Calder Cup winning Hershey Bears, as you said. And for the second year in a row, the Checkers would get eliminated by the eventual Eastern Conference champions. The year before, they were knocked out by Springfield, who would go on to play in the Calder Cup and lose to Chicago. But overall, on the year, at the beginning of the season, I wasn't quite sure what to think of this team and what to make of them because there were so many new parts. There was not a lot of returners. You know, they picked up guys like Riley Nash, who proved to be a superstar for the team, and he earned it and got his one-way deal with the New York Rangers this offseason. You had, you know, question marks in goal with the signing of Alex Lyon, and you have now the youngster in goal, Matt Guzda, and you're kind of sitting there thinking like, okay, what's he going to do? They bring in a veteran in JF Berube, and it's like, okay, so what is this team going to be? Because there was a certain guys like your Dalpies, you know, that were coming back and that you knew what you got, but not a lot of them. I'd say they kind of made up like 15 to 20% of the roster. The other 80% had a lot of question marks, and boy, did they answer themselves throughout the year.
Yeah, and there's gonna be a lot of turnover again now with the Charlotte Checkers coming into this season. I know Mackie Samoskevich played a few regular season games and then some playoff games with the Charlotte Checkers as well. Mike Benning is going to be a part of the mix as well. Matt Goose is going to get another year under his belt with the Charlotte Checkers, and also Ludovic Weber, who had a great campaign over in Switzerland, is going to be a part of it. He's going to be part of Rookie Showcase as well, and all. And also for the Florida Panthers and the Charlotte Checkers going into this prospect showcase as well. There's going to be also guys who have had success elsewhere, and the few guys who are, one of them is coming back to the Checkers this season. Santtu Keenan had some success in Finland. 7th round pick. You're gonna have to really start banking with if you're the Florida Panthers, because they only have one 1st round pick in the Rookie Showcase, which is Mackie Samoskevich. Santtu Keenan has had success, a great season in Charlotte. Evan Naus is coming into the mix for the first time after winning the Memorial Cup with the Quebec Remparts as well. And Mike Benning wins an NCAA championship 2 seasons ago with the University of Denver. I want to ask you, how much does it give players a leg up when they win elsewhere and going into these rookie showcases, and even when they make it to the AHL?
It does, because I think, you know, just that experience of the anxiety and the nervousness and all the emotions that go into playing in a championship level game, whether it's, you know, the Memorial Cup, whether it's NCAA championships, whatever that might be, you know, you experience that anxiety, that nervousness, and really how to play and how to be clutch, if you want to use that word. So when you come into the AHL, you're going to have a lot of those same emotions anyway. You're playing with guys that are much bigger, that are much more experienced. This is now professional hockey. So you can forget juniors. You can forget collegiate play. You need to tap into your experience, into some of those emotions and how you've handled that to try and make these teams and to better yourself, because the coaching is going to be a lot different. You're going to have leaders on this team that are going to want you to do certain things a certain way. All of that changes. So that experience really kind of helps you out, because you've been put in the high pressure situations before, and you've seen how you've handled it. You felt how you felt in those motions and in those moments. So now just go ahead and translate that to just a slightly different thing. It's, you know, it's kind of like graduating from high school and going into college. You kind of know what you're going to expect, but you really don't have any idea until you get there and you experience it.
Yeah, and definitely it's a little bit of room of growth. And Mike Benning actually had an opportunity to discuss with the media after day 1 of rookie camp about just getting the excitement and also his experience as being a black ace with the Florida Panthers, and getting and listening to the older guys and the fact that it was a short off season, was not part of D camp, but gets a summer off to kind of get refreshed and everything as well. And a few other players. I know this player is not going to be with the Charlotte Checkers coming this season, but a few players who have similar games to each other. One who is going to be with the Checkers again, Justin Sordoff, who has a motor, and then Josh Davies, who's going to be with the Portland Winterhawks this season, a guy who's like the Energizer Bunny, who uh, who uh, s- uh, who with the and I want to get your opinions on just another year of Justin sort of growing, and also of Josh Davies, who played a game with the Charlotte Checkers last year, and who's going to be returning to the WHL this year.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Justin sort of take that second year. He was hurt a little bit last year in the middle of the season. So, when you look at his stats, they kind of valley a little bit when he missed those games. But he came onto the scene so strong to start the year, and he really had a strong finish as well. But he's a guy with a motor that just does not stop. And when you need someone out there with that speed to find those greasy areas, to make sure that, he's moving the team and moving the forward group up and getting the puck out, it's sort of is fantastic and so much fun to watch. He's like the Tasmanian devil out there. It's incredible how he can go in on a breakaway and then in half a second, all of a sudden he's back checking as the puck goes the other way and he's ahead of some of the other guys. And I remember seeing him in the showcase last year in Raleigh, and I wrote notes on my phone as I was watching a lot of guys that likely were going to land in Charlotte. And I remember, I think he was number 58 or something like that during the showcase. And I remember writing down speedster, greasy hands, slippery, and those are the things that I was like, keep an eye on that. Let's see if that falls out once he gets to the AHL and he's playing against, full-time professional players. And absolutely not. He plugged himself right in there, and all of those stats and all of those attributes came out instantly on the ice. So I'm really excited to see his return, and hopefully he can stay healthy for the entire year. And on the other side, Josh Davies, we only saw him in that one game, but yes, he's a very similar type player with that high motor, the high energy. For him, I think it's just going to be because he is so young, he just needs to learn the Florida Panthers, Charlotte Checker style of play and use that speed and kind of just harness it the way that sort of has, and use it within the system where you're not being caught, you're not out of position. And I'm not saying that he was in that one game, but there were certain instances where you can see, okay, he's definitely still just sticking his toes in the pro water. He's got to get used to this, and another year with Portland will do him really well, and we're excited to see him whenever it is that he lands, whether it be in Florida or in Charlotte. I think he's going to be a great piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, and thankfully he will have his Portland new teammate in the Portland Winterhawks in Merrick Alsher, where Merrick Alsher was a third-round pick for the Panthers in the 2022 draft. Also, some teammates who are going to be together from North Bay Battalion, Liam Arnsby, and goalie Charlie Robertson as well. Those are going to be two teammates who are going to be together in the rookie showcase in Estero that begins tonight at 7 p.m. against the Carolina Hurricanes. But we are going to transition over to segment number 2, where we are going to talk about some of the older guys in the rookie showcase, and not necessarily that time is running out, but what they need to do to take that next step to get into NHL action. We are going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel. And football season has kicked off, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long, because right now when you bet a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and in this specific podcast, you have a Miami Dolphins fan and you have a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And you never know. There is an opportunity that each of them could reach the Super Bowl. You never know. So if you want to place on bets on those teams individually, you will get some benefits every time they win a regular season game. Once again, spreads, player props, over under, and much more. So if you want to place your bets on either of them, or even the Florida Panthers, if you're talking about hockey, you want to go to fanduel.com/locked on and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/locked on. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I got the play-by-play voice of the Charlotte Checkers and the host of the Chillin With Chillot podcast, TJ Chillot, here on the show. And TJ, so like we spoke about, some of these players for the Charlotte Checkers, Florida Panthers in this rookie showcase. You have quite a few undrafted players. Some of them will be playing under AHL contracts like a Wilmer Skoog, a Riley Bizu, and then there are some older players. Some who are under contract like Kali Shaling and a Santu Kinunen and Jake Wise and Ryan McAllister, and then others who are also playing on AHL contracts as well in Skylar Brindamore, who had opportunities to play last season. As far as some of those guys, how what as far as not necessarily last chance, but how big is, even though the results don't matter as far as who wins and loses, how important is it for each of those guys to have a big showing here at the rookie showcase?
Oh yeah, it's huge because every single one of those players has something that they need to prove if they're going to stay with the organization. But everybody's a little bit different. I think when you look at some of the names that you talk about, when you look at someone like a Mackie Samoskevich or a Wilmer Scoot, guys that have either no or just a little bit of a taste of the pro game. I think what the coaches and what the scouting staff and GMs and everybody's looking at is, do they belong? And I think we saw that Mackie Samoskevich, he is certainly as advertised. We saw that in the postseason and the handful of games that he played with the Checkers at the end of the season. I think his goal is to go in and show why he belongs with the Florida Panthers and not why he belongs with the Charlotte Checkers. But then there's other guys, across the board. Kali Jalin and Santu Kinunen, they had an entire season last year to show that they belong in the American Hockey League and beyond. Now it's their chance to show that they can turn the skills that maybe they were lacking just a little bit. I know Kali Jalin, he was often the guy that would be rotated in as that seventh defenseman. Sometimes he would get some games, sometimes he wouldn't. He was not the best scorer from the blue line. He was pretty stout defensively, but he could get better there. For a guy like Jalin, that's what he needs to focus on. He needs to focus on being an every single night player. He needs to work on his offensive game a little bit better, and he needs to tighten up defensively a little bit better. On the other side, for Santu Kinunen, this is a guy that was, I believe, the defensive points leader outside of Lucas Carlson last year. So that puts him number 2 on the roster in terms of D-men in points. I don't think he needs to show that offensive capability. He certainly needs to keep that level, but he's got to work on his defensive side because obviously it's a double-edged sword. The more offensive you are as a defenseman, that means you're leaving yourself vulnerable to the defensive capabilities. He's just got to worry about raising water on both of those sides so that he can be a well-rounded player and go forward. So it's certainly important for every single one of those players, whether it's Samoskevich, whether it's Skoog, whether it's Keenan, and it even doesn't matter if this is your quote-unquote final year of your contract. If you look at a guy like a Patrick Giles, who's probably the oldest guy in this showcase, he's had 90 some odd games, I think, including playoffs with the Checkers. It's really his opportunity to prove, do you belong? And that's kind of the undercurrent under every single one of these guys. It's, do you belong and where do you belong? AHL, NHL, are you a rotate out every other night kind of guy? Are you an ECHL guy? Those are the questions that coaches are going to be looking for.
Yeah, and Patrick Giles, 72 games with the Charlotte Checkers, earned himself an entry-level contract last year. Actually, something that you predicted prior to that, as far as guys who you're really looking forward to watching. Kali Shaleen, 39 games, 8 points. Like you said, a guy who rotates in as that seventh defenseman for the Charlotte Checkers, and for Santu Keenan, 35 points in 69 games. So definitely racks up the points. As far as when you talk about a guy who goes up as far as produces points, you're talking about a guy who jumps in on the rush, and then you have to have a forward back so if the puck gets lost in transition or it gets checked out of your stick, you're leaving your goalie on the other side a little vulnerable as well. So definitely that's an opportunity for Santu Keenan, especially like we spoke about pre-recording. These are the opportunities for the Florida Panthers to really hit on their later round picks, like we said. Only one first round pick you have, and then you have also other players who have gone from other organizations that have been drafted. Like Jake Wise was drafted by Chicago, Charlene was drafted by the New York Rangers as well. So that gives so a lot of guys are getting their multiple chances here, and this is definitely one of them. Other players that I want to discuss are Nathan Staios and Zachary Ewens. Nathan Staios, undrafted, played in the OHL, and Zachary Ewens, drafted by the Florida Panthers, was part of that third pair with the Florida Everblades, winning a championship with the Everblades. Nathan Staios did not finish the season for the Everblades, unfortunately due to injury. Did get an opportunity to see Staios play in Orlando when they played against the Solar Bears, and I was at Game 3 of the Kelly Cup final between the Florida Everblades and Idaho Steelheads. Got to see Zachary Ewens play. But as far as guys taking that next step from ECHL to the AHL, what are you looking into as far as Nathan Staios and Zachary Ewen as two defensemen?
I'm going to start with Zach Ewens because he had the opportunity. He played a handful of games for us 2 seasons ago, looked pretty solid, and then joined the team early this year and had the opportunity to stick around, but ultimately got beat out. The Keenanins, the Jalines, the newer guys that came onto the roster pushed him down to the ECHL. So I think this is his opportunity to get mad, if you will, that he spent most of last season with the Florida Everblades and earn that spot back. In order for him to do that, he's got to plug some of the holes on the blue line that he has. I remember a handful of games that he's played with us. He's a taller guy, and his footwork needs a little bit of work because it seems like he could be worked around a little bit easier from some of the speedier forwards in the league, and it ends up just kind of being a traffic cone sometimes standing there at the blue line, and he ends up back checking really well because he does have a little bit of speed to go with that size, which when you're a little bit taller, you're going to have a little bit longer of a stride. You can be a little bit faster. He's just got to work on a little bit with that footwork, and I hope that's something. I didn't get the chance to see him a lot last year in the ECHL with our seasons obviously running congruently, but I hope he had the chance to work on that a lot last year and just listen to some of the vets on that team. And when he did come up as a Black Ace towards the end of the year, continue to work on that with the Charlotte Checkers coaching staff. So hopefully he has that. And Staios, I think they're looking for the offensive capability to kind of show up for him. He had a pretty decent year until he got hurt with the Everblades. So I think they're now looking, again, going back to the last question you asked, I think it's now, how does your skill set that you've been working on for the past 365 days translate into getting into that next level? How are you going to land your spot in the AHL? And I think everybody, whether you're a coach, broadcaster, ticket person, we all have our just things that we aren't as good at doing on other things that we're really good at doing. So I think once you can, like I said, once you can raise that boat and you can be well-rounded, that's how you're going to land. So in the case of Nate Staios, I think in order for him to be a little bit more well-rounded, he's got to do it offensively.
No doubt. So that's definitely something to work on for both Staios and Zachary Ewens, as Staios 44 games, 18 points, 14 assists, 4 goals, and Ewens had a good amount of games. I believe he had 19 games exactly with the Charlotte Checkers last season. Got to go back and check the elite prospect profile, but a good handful of games for the Charlotte Checkers last season. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to discuss some more guys that we are looking forward to watching, and maybe get a little bit of TJ's opinion on who can earn themselves entry-level contract after rookie showcase. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Jace Medical. And the Jace case provides up to 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is to fill a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board certified physicians. Get ongoing care with our physicians on any treatment related questions, doctor created, doctor recommended. And you don't want to get caught unprepared, and everybody should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Everyone everyone handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication, delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. So empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics and 50 plus that treat 50 plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Third and final segment here on this Friday, September 15th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Rookie Showcase kicks off tonight at Hertz Arena in Estero, Florida, home of the back-to-back Calder Cup champions, Florida Everblades. And I'm here with the play-by-play voice of the Charlotte Checkers, TJ Chillot here. And we haven't spent too much time talking about the top prospect, Mackie Samoskevich, and also I want to discuss him and along with another guy, Grayson Sachin, who the Florida Panthers recently drafted as well this past year in the second round. And I like I've seen in Mackey's the D camp scrimmage, love his north and south game, able to body up on the rush as well whenever he has a defenseman right on him, and also Grayson Sachin, a guy who can get in front of the net. He says he loves watching Matthew Tkachuk's game as well, and he says that he's a guy that he wants to really model his game after as well. And because this is Mackey is the only first round pick here, we gotta talk, give him his flowers a little bit here. How much forward are you to watching Mackie Samoskevich play again in Charlotte? That's assuming he is there. Who knows? Jordy Kinnear did say that there is a chance to make it to the NHL, and something we spoke about a few weeks ago. But also Grayson Sachin as well, a guy who loves to crash the net. How much are you looking forward to watching those two guys?
Starting with Samoskevich, I can remember distinctly last year, he played those handful of games for us. And my pregame routine as I'm walking up to the press box, it walks right through the stands. And, fans will always ask me my opinions on players and games and what happened the night before. And once he came onto the scene, everybody was asking me, what is his story? The casual fans, they want to know, where did Mackie Samoskevich come from? And then when you tell them University of Michigan and you tell them some of the pedigree that they have, all of them, every single one of them was like, he's not going to be here next year, is he? Like there's just something about him that just screams if he takes this opportunity, makes the best of it, much like Coach Kinnear said, the NHL is absolutely a place where he can start the year. If he has a bang up development camp, showcase, goes into training camp with the Florida Panthers and maybe makes a name for himself that way, it would not surprise me if he does not play a single game for the Charlotte Checkers this year. But the realistic thing is he's probably going to be down here for development's sake. And if he is here, he is instantly going to be just that prime offensive leader on this team. He has the speed. He has the hands. He has the shooting capability, the IQ, the vision. All of it is very, very high for his age, and playing Big Ten hockey and playing NCAA and going as far as Michigan does. I mean, I was going to say did, but they're constantly getting in the mix for the national for the Frozen Four, the national title game. He's had great coaching up to this point. He's instantly going to be an impact player for the Charlotte Checkers, especially when you look that, the impact players of the last couple of years. Zach Dalpe's not getting any younger, although I'm sure he's still going to have a good season for the Checkers if he's here. And Riley Nash no longer with the Charlotte Checkers after signing a one-year one-way deal with the New York Rangers, which he much deserved after leading the team in points last year. So there is right now some gaps in terms of who are the true offense guys on this team, because yes, there's Lucas Carlson. If he's back, you're going to get your points from him on the blue line, but there's really, when you go up and down the roster, it's like, who's going to be those guys? And I'm looking at a lot of the younger guys. I'm looking at guys like Mackie Samoskevich. On the other side, Grayson Sachin, look, if you can get 58 points in 58 games in the WHL, you have some talent, especially for Seattle out there in the WHL. That tends to be the Wild West in terms of all the CHL teams. The WHL is just so different year after year after year, and he's had consistent success with that team. I'm really excited to see his game unfold a second round pick. He's got a little bit of development. He's a little bit more raw, but we'll see. Once the Florida Panthers organization kind of gets their hands on him and turns him into the player that they'd like him to be, I think he's going to fit a very similar role. And I would not be surprised that when it's Sachin's time to come to the Charlotte Checkers and start getting his feet wet in the pro game, that I'm having those same conversations with some of the fans where they just kind of look at him and go, yeah, he's a little bit different. He doesn't necessarily belong here, does he? So we'll see what happens. But I'm really looking forward to a lot of the young guys because we're going to have a very big young contingency this year.
Yeah, and with the WHL just producing a lot of high drafted prospects, especially this past year, Grayson Sachin was a guy who fell, who was seen as someone who fell to the Florida Panthers, and some had him even in 30s as far as their ranks. One other player that is who has some international experience under him that I had not mentioned yet is Sandis Vilmanis, who's going to be playing with the Sarnia Sting this year as well, and that's another player. But we did speak about guys last year who to look out for, and you spoke about Patrick Giles last year, and then he, like we said, ended up signing an ELC with the Panthers. Of the guys who aren't under contract, or as far as their ELC, or even as have specifically an AHL contract, is there a specific guy that we hadn't mentioned yet that you are keeping a specific eye on?
I would say probably, and I'm not sure what his contract status is. I don't believe he's signed, but Jake Wise. I really liked what I saw from him when he came onto the scene. Again, another Big Ten NCAA product out of Ohio State. He scored a goal in his first game, if I'm not mistaken, with the Charlotte Checkers. But he's a bigger body. He's a little bit smaller than Patrick Giles, but he fits a similar role. And I think the Checkers need more than just Patrick Giles in terms of size when you talk about crowding the net, when you talk about just getting into those in tight areas. I think they need a little bit of help there. And Jake Wise not only has that big body and that ability to get down low, look for those deflections and just be in the goalie's face, but he also has some decent hands. We've seen him rip off a couple of wristers that if they didn't find twine, they were pretty darn close. I'm really excited to see Jake Wise get the opportunity to be full-time in the AHL and see what he can make of his opportunity. He's certainly one name that's certainly popped out. And I'm also curious to see what we see. And again, I don't know what his contract status is. I don't have it memorized at this moment. But Matt Gusta, I want to see year two. This is a kid that last year with the goaltending situation, we didn't know how much attention Matt Gusta was going to get. And sure enough, he's put in his first professional start in game number 2 for the Checkers. It was the second game of the season. He comes seconds away from his first professional shutout in his first start. It was a last-minute goal that was scored against him. I think it was 28 seconds left to go in the game, but he instantly looked like a guy that belonged in the AHL in his rookie year, and you don't often see that. And when you do see that, year number 2 can go one of two ways. Either A, they continue on that trajectory, and sure enough, he's going to be an NHL player in no time at all, or sometimes they get a little bit lax because they're like, oh, this game comes natural to me. I'm just going to continue to do what I did and maybe not necessarily focus on some of the basics as much. And all of a sudden you start to see that sophomore slump. So I want to see him avoid that sophomore slump and get ready and be in the NHL in the next couple of years because he certainly showed that he belonged last year.
Yeah, for Jake Wise, 2028 third-round pick from the Chicago Blackhawks, who completed 5 years of college, 3 at Boston College, 2 at Ohio State, will be playing under an AHL contract this year with the Charlotte Checkers. Almost a point per game last season with Ohio State, 12 goals, 27 assists for 39 points in 40 games. And Matt Gusta, a little bit up and down with the NHL squad due to their injuries, as well as Sergei Bobrovsky with stretching out his groin a little bit in January, and then his non-COVID illness when Spencer Knight was on the NHL/NHLPA Players Assistance Program. Matt Gusta was with the team, but never made a start for the Florida Panthers. So I can see how a little bit of time off and not actually getting in-game action can really affect Gusta's game as far as being on time and getting down to the butterfly position as far as closing the 5-hole as well, and being on top of the crease on the rush to take away the angles. So not to Matt Gusta's fault as far as the situation that played with the goalies. So hopefully a little bit of stability as well, a lot of help on the NHL side, so that Matt Gusta can have more of the bulk of the starts. Of course, him and Weber are Ludovic Weber are gonna be there's gonna be a lot of splits between the two, especially because Weber had a 914 save percentage in his season in Switzerland last year. So definitely gonna be a challenge for Gusta out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Not a lot of prospects come out of there, so definitely a great story for Mac as well. So, TJ, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast to preview rookie showcase and give the listeners an opportunity to plug your work.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I mean, it's the Florida Panthers organization, Charlotte Checkers. The partnership and relationship has been phenomenal over the last 2 years, and I'm so happy and thankful to be a part of it. And this is, for the fans that are going to tune in and watch the showcase tonight, it's so telling. When you watch these guys, you can instantly tell the guys that need a little bit more work and the guys who are certainly ready and raring to go. And if you just pay attention, you're going to see all of the future Florida Panthers, because I know a lot of the Panthers fans out there are kind of wondering what's in store for the future. You've got the Matthew Tkachuks and some of the other bigger name players locked down, but it's all those ancillary role players. What is the team going to look like in a couple of years? Bobrovsky, how much more does he have in the tank? Watch the showcase. Eventually, you're going to see a lot of these names. I would not be surprised when you start seeing guys like Davies, like Skylar Brindamore, I think will get an opportunity at the NHL at one point or another. You're going to start seeing a lot of these guys. Santu Kinnunen will get a chance to make his imprint as well. Keep an eye on these guys during the showcase. And, of course, watch the Charlotte Checkers throughout the season as well, because there's a number of other players that are going to get their call-ups to the NHL level when the Florida Panthers see some injuries or anything of the sort. So keep an eye on us all season long.
Awesome, TJ. Thank you so much, and hope to see you next time, my friend.
Awesome. Armando, thanks again.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And every day, make sure you come back early next week as we are going to recap the rookie showcase from Estero, Florida. So I'm Armando Velez with TJ Chillot, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.